Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where the topic is how OnePlan and Microsoft 365 ensure strategic alignment with AI-powered portfolio planning. And I'll now turn the presentation over to Jim.
Thank you, Robert. Welcome, everybody. Um, Thank you for joining us today. I'm pleased to be here to talk about this topic. Strategic alignment of our portfolios of work and initiatives is becoming a very important topic in this day and age. And we want to talk about how OnePlan can help enable that with the help of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem today, and also leveraging the AI tools that are available to us as well. Just a little bit about myself. I've been in the project and portfolio management space now for well over 25 years, and from a lot of different dimensions. I've been a consultant who has advised people on it. I've implemented solutions for people, helped design solutions for people. And in the later stages of my career, I've actually, got more involved in the business side of things and bringing these things to market and directly to our customers. So that's my background, and I've seen a lot of change and shift over time. And there's never been a more exciting time than right now with the changes that are happening with technology and the disciplines that we're putting into place. So let's get started. you know, why should we strategically align in our organizations? What are the business challenges that we are facing today that can be addressed by doing strategic alignment? Well, we can prevent misuse of resource and prevent us putting resources on the wrong things and help optimize that. We could mitigate poor strategic execution, and we can translate high-level strategies into actionable chunks of work that actually help deliver on those strategies and help ensure the long-term outcome goals are achieved within the organization. We also may have a lack of organizational focus or consistent organizational focus in our decision making, and having everybody on the same page so that we choose projects and we execute on projects and select the projects that will deliver the value that support the strategies of where the organization wants to go. We also may have siloed operations. There's cross-departmental collaboration that happens now with transformational projects, whether they be business transformation, digital transformation, or others. And to help align that and getting everybody rowing in the same direction is important. Instead of going into our own parochial departmental needs and priorities, what's the organization trying to achieve and how can we contribute to that? There's also an overall inability to adapt to change in many organizations, and dynamic reprioritization of things because situations in the economic environment change, our competitive landscape change, and sometimes we have to shift strategies more than just that old annual plan that we used to have. So it really promotes more agile portfolio management if we adopt this strategic alignment type of approach. And we really want to get stakeholder engagement up and rowing to achieve those higher level objectives and things that we want to do. And also have good performance measurement, strategic KPIs that are measuring the right things that will determine success within our organizations. So these are just some of the things that strategic alignment will help us address. Now, the challenges of doing this and putting that into place, well, many organizations sometimes lack a clear strategy. So if the strategic goals are vague or not well communicated across the board, cross-functionally in the organization or up and down the hierarchy, aligning projects can become difficult. Siloed decision making, as I mentioned, maybe departmental or functional areas may be making their own decisions based on their own priorities and interests and may not unify to the overall organizational goals. The changing strategic priorities may evolve due to the market changes that I talked about, and ongoing alignment is a moving target. And if we're not all doing this in a similar fashion, it's very hard to adjust in a timely fashion where we can still make a difference. And then there's the resource constraints, times of uncertainty, like we're kind of in now. Limited financial, human, or technical resources can hinder our ability to prioritize strategic projects because we've got to keep the doors open and keep the operational things going. Sometimes that takes precedence. Sometimes we put the strategic things on the back burner. Ineffective governance. So without a good governance model for oversight and selection and prioritization, we could lack strategic focus or maybe prone to maybe who pounds the table the hardest in order to get projects into the mix. And then just poor communication and stakeholder engagement, making sure that everybody understands where the organization wants to go and figure out how their contribution to that is going to come into play. Now, some methods for doing this and getting strategic alignment in place for your organization. Well, one, establishing a clear strategic framework of how we're going to do this is important. Define our overall mission and vision, our strategic objectives, our OKRs, and help that be our North Star for guiding our project selection. If it's not contributing to us achieving the things the organization wants to do, then we should ask ourselves, why are we doing it? Portfolio management processes. We need a robust portfolio management process so that we can, on an ongoing basis, as these things come into the pipeline, evaluate, prioritize, and select projects based on their strategic fit, as well as the value that they're going to provide. We should have scoring models and decision matrices so that we have more objective decision making, right? As instead of strong personalities or pet projects and desk drawer projects, let's use proper scoring models to value projects on a consistent basis and then weigh them in that way so that we pick the right things based on common criteria. Also, regular portfolio reviews. As I mentioned, the old annual operating plan method doesn't really work in a fast-paced environment that we're in today. So we need to reassess alignment and strategies as external conditions change or as internal conditions change, depending on the nature of our business. And so we need to be more dynamic in the way we do this. We need to get everybody involved. So people from the different functional areas need to be involved, as well as the executive sponsors, so that we can make sure that we're on the same page when it comes to setting these strategic goals and embarking on the projects and initiatives. We also need to use the right PPM tools, project and portfolio management tools, so that we can adopt tools that can actually support the things that we're looking to do above here, right? Including a balanced scorecard so that we can align projects with the strategic goals on a number of dimensions, right? There's financial dimensions, there's customer needs and customer satisfaction, there's internal things that we have to do, and just the overall learning and growth of the organization of where we want to go. So what are some of the benefits? Well, we can improve our resource allocation, get our resources and our most valued resources on the right things that are most strategic. Hopefully we can increase our return on investment, but more importantly, increase the value that we're delivering to both our internal and external customers. We can also enhance our decision making by providing clear rationale for project selection, right? And be willing to, based on that criteria, determine whether or not to continue investing in certain projects or whether we should terminate them and move on to other things that come in that are more higher priority and more higher value. And just promote greater organizational agility, right? If we have the visibility of this and we have the criteria that we need, we can respond quicker and respond at a time when we can actually influence or actually have an impact on the things that are being done. All this helps reduce our risk, helps us get stronger stakeholder buy-in, and we have ongoing performance visibility so we know how project outcomes are tracking and whether or not they're actually ultimately going to contribute to our strategic goals. Now, OnePlan is designed to do all the things that we mentioned up above. It's an AI-enabled strategic portfolio and work management platform that helps businesses streamline their operations and optimize these things that we're talking about here. Some of the pain points and needs that organizations have, these are just the high level ones, but we do connect strategy to execution. We do deliver real-time visibility and insights. We do unify tools and teams, as we'll talk about. So if you have multiple tools in place and that proliferation of different tools on execution and planning, we can bring that all together into a common hub. We can optimize resource and capacity planning. We can centralize the financial management on your initiatives. And we can support hybrid work delivery models. As we know, there's agile and waterfall and variations and hybrids of all that stuff that are in play today. How do you harness all that and bring that together? OnePlan is designed to do that. Now, the end-to-end capabilities, I'll just talk about these at a high level, but on the demand side, establishing that strategic execution plan, the objectives and the key results is key. Because as we then go into ideation and requests and the intake or the pipeline of things that people are requesting or suggesting that we do, we want to evaluate those in the context of it. Does it align with the strategy of where we're going? And then we have other aspects to do that. So for example, there may be product portfolios, application portfolios, business capabilities that we have to assess whether they need to be addressed in order to succeed at the strategies we want to achieve. So all of that demand and the factors around that are harnessed and made visible and relatable by OnePlan. On the planning side, ultimately, from that demand, we got to select the right things. So based on the criteria that we establish, being able to select the right portfolios and have visibility to that portfolio at all times, but also selecting a portfolio that fits within our capacity to deliver those resources so the demand doesn't exceed our capacity, so that we have a chance of success and we deliver things without setting ourselves up for failure. The same thing holds true with detailed, time phase, cost category, cost center type financial planning. And we mentioned the fast changing environment that we're in. What if scenario modeling is paramount? We have to have the ability, and we'll talk about that and focus on that a bit today, is what are alternatives and what are the things we can be doing? What are the things we should be doing based on strategic alignment, based upon our constraints of both dollars and resources, and the timing of maybe when we should do these types of things. We'll talk about how we can do scenario planning in here. And then ultimately you have to execute. The focus of our webinar today isn't really on the execution side of things, but we establish work plans. OnePlan has the capability to do it all in and of itself. It has its own waterfall planning, its own agile planning. It has its own hybrid planning that has a mix of waterfall and agile components in it. We don't need the other tools, but we have connectors to the most popular project management and work management tools out there. So if you're using those things today, we can pull that data into OnePlan and roll that into the portfolio of work that we have here for its visibility and its management. Also, the team members can go in there and provide status and report time and all those types of things on the execution side of things. And then where would we be without reporting? The ability to look at project-specific status reports, look at portfolio level, program level dashboards, et cetera. When we talk about all the components that are in an end-to-end strategic portfolio management solution, seeing how those things interrelate, the visualizations that we'll show you today show all the things that we should consider and all the things that are associated or related to what we need to do. So all the components for success are at our fingertips, and we can keep track of how all those dimensions are doing. Now, we'll talk about AI a bit today in both the demonstration and in the presentation here. But Sophia GPT is our purpose-built AI that will help us with all the things that we described above. Ultimately, the goal is two things: select and do the right work, make sure we're working on the right things, and then give us the ability to execute well so that we achieve success and get the right outcomes. Now, part of the OnePlan message is it's an enterprise platform that allows us to incorporate all the things we talked about in the leading up slides. Governance, having a good governance model modeled in OnePlan so that we have the right intake, demand, selection, and execution all the way through delivery. The business capabilities that I showed in the prior slide are all there and available to us. But what ends up happening in organizations is the needs of different parts of the organization can vary, even though we're all rowing towards the same strategic direction. Now, these solution areas might have an overall strategy in place. We might have solution areas in OnePlan that are specifically tailored to things like IT, R&D, product, operations, professional services, et cetera. But the PMO or the EPMO across all of that needs to have visibility and the ability to track that and serve leadership with the data that's in there. Now, because it's highly configurable, you can actually build your own solutions for different things that your particular organization or your particular industry might need. But we have all kinds of templates to get you started. Now, we talked about being part of the Microsoft ecosystem, and OnePlan is delivered from the Microsoft cloud and has all the benefits of compliance and security and other things that are available to us and certifications. But we also have integrations to Microsoft and non-Microsoft tools alike of a variety of different genres. And we can fold that in so that OnePlan can be that enterprise platform that also serves as your enterprise hub for bringing all that data together so you can do all the things we described in the needs for strategic alignment. Now, these connectors, these are not custom coded types of things. This is a platform that OnePlan has called OneConnect, and it allows us to enable connectors for your organization that routinely and automatedly brings in data to and from those solutions. So it ends up being one hub and data sync, both bidirectional or one directional, however you might like it. The key is that you have the one source of truth and one place for all that data across all your initiatives aligned with the strategy and the resources and the financials all around all of that. We also extend the power of Microsoft 365. As I mentioned, we're built on the Microsoft cloud. We connect with the common tools that people use for planning out there, like Planner and Project and Azure DevOps, content and collaboration in Teams and other things like that. So we basically have all the elements in there. We also have out-of-the-box Power BI reports if you want to leverage your Power BI capabilities in your Microsoft ecosystem. We even use Microsoft's Entra ID for our authentication so that you're fully in control and leveraging this as part of your Microsoft ecosystem. You don't log into OnePlan as some separate entity within your organization. It really dovetails very nicely with your Microsoft experience. Now, the things we're going to talk about today in the demonstration, connecting investment to strategy. So we have to outline the strategic plan and then ultimately associate different ideas, different requests, different projects and initiatives to that strategy so we understand what's going to support it. We then have to capture and evaluate the best ideas. So as we have a place for ideation, for requests and ideas to come in and see which are the right ones for us to select to promote into projects and initiatives so that they can support our overall achievement of our strategies. Then having visibility across all of it. Now we'll talk about different areas that might be specialized in here that you can look at your own areas of things that are applicable to you, but have, say, for example, an EPMO or your senior leadership be able to put its finger on everything in a portfolio and look at unified portfolio views and all the things that are going on around that and seeing how they're tracking and how they're performing at any given point in time is something that is invaluable to organizations as they try to adjust and make decisions for success. And then I mentioned the visualizer. Once we have all these components in here, we have, objectives and key results. We have projects, we have epics, we have some key results, we have maybe business capabilities, et cetera. What are the things that we have to address in order to succeed at achieving the overall strategy? Well, OnePlan lets you see that very readily in a very graphical format. And then choose the right work with confidence and clarity. We'll talk about using our what if analysis capability with our modeler. And we'll get into that today, but it's really about evaluating alternatives. And then part of those alternatives is balancing resource capacity with demand. Do we have the resources available to us in total and in the specific areas that we're going to need in order to make this thing work and have a model that is teed up for success rather than overcommitted and wrought with potential failures as we go into it. Now, we'll show some examples of Sophia today and see it in action with some prompts and things like that in the various areas of the solution. But it is a purpose-built solution for strategic portfolio management. It leverages Microsoft's Azure OpenAI, so it's got the additional security and compliance outside of the open, rather than the open internet like we might have with ChatGPT. It also leverages what OnePlan has trained it to on what OnePlan does and the strategic portfolio management disciplines. It also leverages on a transactional basis without learning from it your data so that when you ask it to address something with a prompt, it's going to leverage the data that you have available to it at any given point in time so the responses are specific to your model and responsive to your specific data in the solution. So that's our preface to this, and I really want to get into showing you the solution itself as we go on through. And I thought I would start in the corporate strategy area since the strategic alignment is really where all this begins. Now, OnePlan is highly flexible in the way that you might configure it. So we do have templates to get started, and what we're going to show you here is a traditional hierarchy of objectives and key results, but there may be all kinds of associated elements that support those things as we go on through. So for example here, if I look at this objective summary view, where I'm looking at how each of these objectives is tracking, looking at who's the manager that owns that, what the status is, maybe what business unit this objective is really aligned with. We can even put time boxes or time frames around that, and we can establish current metrics that roll up around this, as well as prioritization. But if I expand this and I go down and I look at that, we then have key results, which are the tangible measures of how we're progressing towards the achievement of that objective. That's where we can define that and build out a full strategic execution plan. Okay. Now, if I go even further into that, you can see that there are now projects and work efforts and more agile epics that are in here that are being done and executed that are aligned with this key result, which in turn are aligned with this objective that says these are the things that are going on tangibly to help promote and achieve that objective as we go on through, and we can see how those things are tracking as well. Now, if I drill into a key result, for example, one of the things you'll find throughout OnePlan is we have highly configurable forms, and we have this concept of plan types that you can have different forms for different types of elements. So in this particular case, a key result has the data and metadata, the name of the objective, maybe who leads this, what priority we might have it, what business units associated with, but really any data or metadata that you might want to put against a key result can be put into this so that you can categorize and characterize it the way you like. We can also determine what metrics you want to use. Is it a number metric that we're trying to achieve, dollars, percentages, others, for example, that we might want to do? And in this particular case, we look at we've achieved a current number against a target number, and we have progress against that. We can even look at trending because we snapshot the data. Now, as we're building these and we'll see this in any element within OnePlan. AI can just help us in the detailing out of a plan. So for example, I notice I don't have a key result description in here. I could actually use Sophia at this point, and I can say, for example, based upon the data that I've already put in here, right? I can say, help me generate a description for this key result, and actually have it generate that. And as it looks at the data it has in here and the nadir here, it's basically saying, here is what it's looking to do. Here is the description of what we're trying to do. And then we can put this in rich text format and accept that and actually have that be just auto-populate into the key result description as we go through here. We can see that anywhere in the solution as we use AI just to help us build out the details of a plan based upon what it already knows about what you've already put in here, or the nature of the title of what you put in, okay? Now, what's cool about the key result is, this key result may be complex. Now, perhaps you might have a work plan associated with this key result such that you might want to put one in place. Now, you can create a work plan. This one doesn't have one, but you could actually create one from scratch. You could use a template that's already created for yourself. Or if this is fairly unique, we could actually have Sophia create a plan for us, and we can actually ask it to create and build out a list of tasks, or maybe even a full work breakdown structure about what it is. The idea there is we have all kinds of ways that this can help us out. And then on the reporting side of things, this is where we talk about visualization. For example, as I go through something like this, I can see that there's no predecessors or successors to this particular key result, but I can also see what this thing is associated with. So I notice it's associated with a parent objective. The key result is here. And then here are the projects and epics that are aligned with this key result. And also potentially what products or applications or business capabilities or other things might be related to here that we need to keep an eye on in order to succeed with our objective. And at any given point in time, if I look at something that might be at risk or in trouble, I can always get the details on that at any given point in time to assess what those things are. So once again, not only aligning, but keeping our finger on the pulse of where things are going, okay? So this visualizer is very key in what we'd like to do. Now, the same thing holds true. We can do this visualization from any perspective. So for example, if I looked at the parent here on optimized capital allocation, and I just said at the parent level, I want to say, let me visualize with that being the centricity of this analysis. It also doesn't have any real predecessors or successors, but if I look at the runway, notice it has two key results, which in turn have additional projects and epics in here. And then the ones in the other key result really aren't aligned with any products or applications. So once again, I get visibility from wherever I'm at in this solution, not just in the objectives and the key results, okay? Now, this breeds the whole idea of managing a strategic execution plan. So your leadership may use this method here to just track a strategic execution plan from beginning to end on an ongoing basis. But the reality is it's going to spawn things that we're going to do as an organization to support those. If I go into the innovations area, right, you can enhance those icons to give a description. But in here, notice that we have an ideation area. We can establish your challenges and then your ideas that maybe support or address those challenges in the organization. And we can have a variety of views around that. In this particular case, I'm in what I call an all ideas view that's showing all of the narrative, the voting that's happened on that, any priorities that are going on around that, etc. But we can have all kinds of data around this. So for example, if I go in and drill into a specific item that looks to be pretty popular, is website redesign. I can go in and look at the details around this. And once again, notice this page is different than the page we had for the key result and the objectives. Now notice I have an approval process or flow that goes through here that enhances our governance. And this can be tied to workflow and approvals within OnePlan. You can characterize and categorize this. We can have business case narratives in here in detail, just like we did with the description and the key result, right? We can go down here and put in things like how management assesses feasibility and time to implement and the financials it's going to take, and maybe even put a prioritization scoring mechanism in place. And here we're showing two options. One might be more business driver oriented, that is calculated based on the selections in here on, driving a prioritization score based upon weighted scoring. Or maybe you're using an agile approach like weighted shortest job first, WSJF, derive a WSJF score. And then here you can actually add and associate the plans or the strategies in here that this idea might be related with, so we can factor that in our visualizations. So once again, these are highly configurable. You can configure these forms with drag and drop form building in here so that you can make the sections and the data within these whatever you'd like them to be. Once again, helping us align these ideas and this intake and this demand with the strategies that have been outlined up front. Okay. Now, if I go back to the idea portfolio, we have different views in here. So for example, let's just say I want to go to a prioritization view. Now here I've gotten a little bit of the noise out of there, and I'm focused down to what the prioritization scores are in here, what the actual business driver ratings are on each of these things to drive that prioritization score, etc. And as you go in here, you can look at this from a different perspective, especially when you're going into the idea of selecting these things. So what's nice about OnePlan is from this ideation or innovation area, you can take any particular item and either through workflow or for somebody with permissions explicitly doing it, you can actually come in here and convert this idea, say, into a project or into a product or into an application or whatever it is you'd like it to be, so that we can reorganize and then promote this and make it one continuum end to end, from the beginning of the strategy to the ideas and the innovation elements that come into play, to promoting those into something we're going to execute on. So the idea here is that we can handle this stuff end to end for you. Okay. Now, if I am in this prioritization view, for example, perhaps, I don't have a big sampling in here, but let's just say I wanted to use Sophia in this case to help me do some analysis. For example, in this particular case, I might ask it, based on votes, strategic alignment, priority, and ROI, what 3 ideas should we approve first and why? And by the way, if you have common ones that you do, you can pin them in here so that you can actually use frequent prompts that you've developed over and over again without having to reinvent them each and every time. But in this particular case, it's going to look at the data that we have in here. It's going to assess, and it's telling me, what are the 3 that we want to do based upon the votes, how well the strategic alignment is, and then give me some narrative rationale of why it maybe gave this as a suggestion. Now, ultimately, we're going to make the decision, but Sophia here, one of the things it's good at doing is giving us food for thought and factor those things into our decision and augment our human intuition on these types of things and our human analysis. Okay. So now what about the work? What about the things that actually turn into projects and initiatives and get reoriented? Well, if I come in here and I look at, say, for example, a particular functional area within our business, I had mentioned in one of the slides that there's elements so that we have the flexibility to meet the needs of different parts of the organization, but have it all roll up for enterprise portfolio visibility. Well, an example might be a professional services part of the organization. And notice here, the plan type hierarchy is about accounts and then engagements within those accounts that we're working with. So we may be doing engagements with those particular elements. Now, as I come in here and I look at an account and I drill into that, we have account profiles that are in here that are different than the forms we had for other elements in here. And then we have an engagement form that basically gives us the elements for those engagements. And for professional services, we're interested in some additional things in here, like, what our budget is, what our anticipated margin is, what our actual margin, what margin variances we have, et cetera. What's the profitability? How are we doing on effort? Are we going to run out of hours in this thing? What's the invoicing method and those types of things? And then overall engagement health, because these are customer facing type of projects. So ultimately what we've done is we've kind of taken a variation of this all within the same hub of OnePlan and accommodating the needs of a professional services organization within the portfolio. Now, product development. You might have a product development component to your business, and maybe the focus here is by product lines and by products. And then within each product, you might have projects and epics and agile development efforts that are going on to support that particular product. Now, if I go look at a product form, for example, or I might have some reports that are more product oriented, but I also might have a form that basically has a canvas on things like product vision. And this one's yet to be filled out, but we have vision, mission, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and all the data we'd like around that, as well as associated plans that'll show up in the visualizer. And once again, we could look at the total life cycle of a particular product as we go through. We could have resource planning around that, as well as specific work plans, for example, if you want to do this. So for example, as we're planning out releases over the life of this project, we can do that, or this product, we can do that. Once again, some variation on the theme, meeting the needs of a particular part of the organization, but folding this into an overall portfolio management solution. And then what about, say, application portfolio management? Big part of many organizations. As we go through here and look at the applications and we expand this out, now we've got applications and the different projects and epics that are supporting these applications. If I drill into, say, next gen e-commerce, right? I can come in here and I can look at the life cycle of a particular application. I can look at, application scheduling, the application budget. Once again, I got the application vision canvas down here, and different elements that we decide we want to track around this, as well as things that are associated with it all the way across the board. Now, the reason I say this is because as we look about aligning all the initiatives within our organization to the strategic plan, having these things all identified, meeting the needs of a variety of constituencies, allows us to then align all of these things, even with their nuances of differences that they have, up to a common set of strategies that we have within the organization. Now, next, I'm going to show you the concept of an enterprise portfolio that rolls all these things together into one place. So, for example, whether you're in product or in applications or whatever, this enterprise portfolio may have one or more portfolios that represent your entire organization. Okay? We look at the overall view of the plan types that you might have within here, all rolled up by what we call a primary plan type hierarchy. So here we have portfolios, and then within the portfolios, I've got programs, and then within the programs, I've got projects and epics and other elements that might be in here. Now notice here, within this particular program, I've got a few things that didn't appear before. Now here we talked about our connected strategy to other tools. Well, notice there's icons here with each of these plans. Now here, for example, this data warehouse migration, we are connected with Microsoft Teams for content and collaboration, but there's no work management or project management tool associated with this, meaning the entire plan and schedule is being managed right here within OnePlan. But we might have something that the detailed planning might be coming from a Smartsheet or a Trello or an Azure DevOps or a Jira, right? Or a Microsoft Planner or a Rike or a Asana. The idea there is we don't require any of that, but just be aware if you have constituencies that insist on using those execution tools, it doesn't need to be a barrier for you getting and achieving overall enterprise strategic portfolio management. Okay. As we go through here, we have different list views. So traditional list views like you're looking at here. Here we got a portfolio summary view, right? Or maybe you want to look at how this thing is aligned with key strategies and things like that. Look at all the key results and the strategies that we're aligned with. Or you might look at a portfolio prioritization view, where as you're looking at these things and see how these things prioritize and rank and score order, how those things go. We have that available to you to look to help us select the right things. And as I mentioned, we even snapshot data, and I may not have complete data in here, but we have the ability, if you choose to snapshot data, that you have trending information available to you on the metrics that you find the most important, okay? And then there are some reviews. So even though I have a hierarchy that I showed you, you're not limited to that. So for example, I can go in and just look at a list of all my projects and initiatives here within it. And at any given point in time, I could say, let me see this by business unit. And now all of a sudden, I'm looking at this thing grouped and summarized by business unit, not the primary hierarchy, but some other slice or some other perspective or lens on how we'd like to look at this. We can even make it multi-layer. So for example, I might look at this by business unit and then maybe say, how about I look at it by investment category. Now I've got the business unit of operations. Now I can see which ones are there to grow the business, which ones are there for transformation, etc. Once again, flexible viewing on the way we'd like to look at this and the KPIs that we'd like to have available to us at any given point in time. Okay. We also have board views. So for the more agile oriented people, we have board views that allow us to look at these things in a variety of fashions. For example, I could look at this by priority, high, medium, low. In this case, it's looking at. How about if I look at portfolio by investment category and status? So these are the different portfolios, and I can see the different categories we have here of customer satisfaction, grow the business, run the business, transformation. Or in turns, I might be looking at something like this by, I don't know, let's say I want to look at this by business unit, right? And now I'm looking at the business units that I have here and which projects are within each business unit and how they're doing. And even if something shows up red with a card that has some high level information, I can always drill into the details and look at why that thing is red and basically have my fingers on the pulse of why these things are falling out of bed. And this one seems to be we're running off over on effort, but we're doing okay on schedule. So once again, something to keep an eye on and way to keep our finger on the pulse. We also have roadmap views. So for the people that are more uh, roadmap and delivery oriented here, we can look at things in a variety of different fashions from a roadmap perspective. So this investment category roadmap is now looking at the grouping or the swim lanes by investment category, and the color is by status, right? But I could just as easily look at this thing by, I don't know, projects by different business units. And now I can come in here and see the business units that I'm working on things for. The color coding right now by default is showing it by the different status, red, yellow, green. But what if I wanted to look at this by, I don't know, financial health? How are we doing on the financial health? It looks like we have a few that are maybe not performing financially. Or maybe I want to color this thing by effort health, how we're doing on spending of the resources, and we can see a different perspective on that. Once again, we can save as many different roadmap views as we want to meet the needs of how we want to look at the organization. Okay. Now, if I go back to the list view and I go back to this portfolio summary, we could very easily leverage Sophia in our analysis of this portfolio and how we want to prioritize things and maybe reevaluate things at any given point in time. So, for example, one thing I might just do is ask it for some analysis. Let me clear this for a fresh one. And I'll say, can we examine the trends and provide a summary of the current state of the portfolio? Okay. In this particular view, it's going to assess what it sees and what we make available to it. And it's giving me its assessment on the different elements in each of these portfolios and what's going well and what's not going well in each of those things and give me that overall assessment. I can also look at this from another perspective. Let's just say I go into a portfolio alignment view and look at the strategic alignments and other associations we have here in the budgets and the benefits and the priorities and the progress in there. What if I ask it another question? What if I asked it, if budget cuts are needed, which projects should we cancel or put on hold based on strategic importance, ROI, and progress to date? And see what it has to say with that. So basically, it's giving me a list of projects or epics with low progress that we should consider. It's giving me projects with high budget but low prioritization scores. It's giving me different candidates that I should consider in making those things happen. So once again, some quick analysis that might help us in our decision making as we go forward. Okay. So enough about the portfolio stuff, but it's important to understand how the portfolios work. So as we look at doing analysis and prioritization and strategic alignment and selection, that we understand what the elements are that are in here. Okay. Now, if I go in and drill into a specific project, this data warehouse migration, you'll see that we have a details page that's specific to a particular project, carried forth the business case that might have come in through the ideation or innovation area, and all the details of this configurable form and the life cycle of this project or the phases or gates that you might have are here, and they can all be tied to workflow. Okay. If I go into the work plan, there's a variety of ways to do this, but basically we have different work types, just like we have portfolio plan types. And if I go in here and expand this out, I can see that I'm in what they call a schedule work type for more waterfall planning, and you can get your traditional Gantt views and those things around that. We also have the ability to connect this to other tools. We can either build it from templates, or we can connect to whatever connectors of ours that you want to enable within your solution and bring this in from a variety of different tool sets. We also have backlog work types that's more geared towards agile oriented types of approaches. If you want to build backlogs and you want to basically allocate these things into different sprints, you can do that as you go through here and do that planning as you see fit. And once again, the more agile oriented tools, you might align those with your backlog items and say, I want to bring in things from Azure DevOps or Jira or another tool. Whatever you enable in your environment will be connectable into this and bring these things into it and into the realm. So once again, the fragmentation and proliferation of different execution tools need not be a barrier to you to achieving this holistic strategic portfolio management objective. And then resource planning, we can do individual resource plans on the projects, and we can plan on those in a variety of different ways, top down or bottom up from the different tasks or schedules that are in here. And we can plan these things in terms of hours or percentages or just FTEs, whatever is the method that makes the most sense for you. And I talked about financials. So having time phase financials that allow us to look at the detailed categories that we need, be able to track them on a time phase basis, delineate between CapEx and OpEx, and even on the actual side of things, track budget, forecast, actuals, and maybe even connect that to our financial system such that the actuals come in on a more dynamic basis for comparisons to our plans and budgets. All this stuff is in here, and they can be factored in when we do our analysis and our scenario analysis on our selections. Now, let's just say we put all this together. The resource capacity planning's got to aggregate. So we have overall resource planning that gives us the ability to come in here and look in the aggregate. And we have different views that we can have, but this one I'm looking at it organized and summarized by role. And as I come in here, I can look at this committed, which is more of a top-down plan that says, okay, what developers do I have in here? I have named developers, and it also tells me what developers I still have, what plans I still have generic developers assigned there that I haven't yet assigned a name to. Once again, good visibility into things that I might have coming up that I need to get a name to this as I go through this, but it's all rolling up to a total amount of capacity. Now, once we get to the aggregate, sometimes it makes more sense to look at how many FTEs we need. And here I can see, for example, in June, I need 6 FTEs, but I only got a capacity of 5. I need to address this in some shape or fashion, either by not doing some projects or by staffing up. And the idea is that we got to look at this thing in a variety of different ways. Now, can we use this tool to help us in reallocating this? And I say in the near term, look at, say, this cybersecurity enhancement and be able to say, can I find candidates with best matches or some other criteria who might have the bandwidth to do this? And maybe Bob Hartman has the bandwidth to do this, and I could replace that generic with Bob Hartman. Or I could replace an overloaded Ehrlich Bachman on a project with somebody using the same method going on through here. So we can do reconciliation and balancing very quickly right here within the resource plan within OnePlan. Now, this could be a top-down plan that you just put resource allocations against a project, irrespective of what you might have for detailed tasks. And you might do this as the only way of doing resource management, or you might do it in the early stages before you have a detailed schedule and plan. If you do have that detailed and schedule and plan, we can do a bottom-up resource plan that takes your schedules. And as I go into the developer and I go into Bob Hartman and I go into a particular project, it's rolling up all of the different tasks that he's assigned to within that project plan. So doing more of a bottom-up roll-up of these types of things as we go on through. Now, I can also compare. So I can come in here and I say, let me compare my committed to my scheduled, where the scheduled might be greater than what we committed to. And in this particular case, I can see on the different plans, I can see what I originally committed to in my top-down plan and what the schedule says I'm going to need, and I can see the variances where they come into play. So once again, I can do very detailed resource planning in here that's going to factor in to our scenario analysis. So with that, let's go to the modeler. And in the modeler, this is the idea, something outside of your active portfolio that you can establish models and then do different scenarios within the model. So you can see different folders that have been set up here for different parts of the organization. So for example, the information technology department could do its own model for its own projects and initiatives and ideas that are coming in. Now, you might have departmental or functional areas doing their own cut at this before that happens. And they might do their own prioritization and their own modeling to determine what they want to embark upon. And then maybe the organization may do a more enterprise model where they look at all departments and all things after that vetting's been done. But once again, it's the same concept here. I'll go into the 2025 project planning model. And in that, I have a candidate list of 32 projects we'd like to do. Okay, some are active, some are on hold, some are proposed. And the idea here is that if I look at, do I have the resources to do these things? And I might have some over allocations that maybe prevent me from getting that done. I might look at it from a financial perspective and say there's a total amount of dollars that would be needed to do this, which I may or may not have in total to make that happen, and a variety of other aspects that I might look at around that. Now, the goal here would be to then create as many scenarios as I would need to evaluate to do that. And then what would a scenario entail? Now, a scenario might entail, let's just say I start out by looking at, say I have a $3.5 million constraint or budget. Now, I could go through, and this scenario has already been done, but I would go through a process of selecting and deselecting projects until I got to a budget number. And here I'm gotten within the current period close to 3.5. But the process would be that I need to go through this process to whittle down the candidate projects based on priority and other factors to get into that mode that I want to get to. The other thing that we can do in here is we can bring up the timelines on this, and not only can we select or deselect these elements, but I can also come in here and then basically take, say, a proposed project and say, maybe what we need to do is take this out to get down to that number, and maybe we need to move this out a couple quarters and to get this number down a little bit further so that we can get to a number that makes sense. So it can be a combination of staging, timing, and selection to get an idea to get down to that number. And then you can save these scenarios at any given point in time and save as many as you like. Okay. Now, I might also go into something like this and say, well, geez, what if we had another $500,000? What else could we do to do that? And look at that and see that I can do more projects if I had more money, maybe things that I was trying to get in here that we just didn't have the budget for. And then the key here is to really do the analysis of scenario against scenario. For example, I can look at the analysis here and say, okay, of these two scenarios, here's what the budget that would be required in this particular scenario. Here's the committed effort. But for example, for $5 million difference, for $500,000 difference, if I could find another $500,000, I might be able to get another $5 million in benefit. Is it worth me trying to secure that funding in order to get that to happen? Should I look at the details around those comparisons around that and look at, say, the 3.5 scenario versus the $4 million scenario and see what's in and what's out in each of these scenarios and basically determine what the priority is and what is going to make the trip and not make the trip? We can actually export this stuff to Excel for further analysis if you like. And then we can graphically look at the same type of information here at any given point in time with our onboard dashboards around that. So, and make those particular comparisons. The other thing that we can look at, of course, is at any given point in time, we can look at a particular scenario and say, all right, let's use the visualizer in another way. This visualizer can tell me, all right, here's what I selected in this scenario. This is what we gave it an in, right? But have we overlooked a unselected predecessor or successor that needs to be factored in? And at this point, we can decide maybe we need to include this to the exclusion of something else and make sure that that's included because it does have a bearing on our ability to do this data warehouse migration. So once again, another perspective as we analyze this, okay? And then we have all the traditional bubble chart stuff, for example, that you're used to seeing in portfolio management. And you can set the axes the way you want with the fields. Here I did the prioritization score on the y-axis. I did the, on the x-axis, I did the prioritization, benefits on the x-axis, prioritization score on the y-axis. And the bubble size is based on the budget. Now I can see that, looks like my biggest project on this product launch is basically up there in the prioritization score and up definitely on the costs that are required. But I can also come in here and I can also say, what didn't I select? And see if there's things in here that I should have selected that might have been high priority, right? Maybe low cost. Now here's something that's creeping up into a pretty high priority that maybe I might consider based upon where it fits on this grid as we go through. So once again, another part of our analysis as we go through. And you can iterate and do this as many times as you like to come up with the solution that makes the most sense for your next iteration of your portfolio. Okay. All right, I think I'll leave it there for the moment. If I go back to the slides, let's summarize up a little bit and then talk about some next steps you can take. I just want you to know that we do have a very strong strategic partnership with Microsoft, and that's why we are so strong in the Microsoft ecosystem. We've been recognized by them 5 years running, either as their Global Partner of the Year in Project and Portfolio Management or their finalist, as well as being recognized by Gartner, Forrester Wave, Software Reviews, etc. So we have certifications and recognition across the industry, as well as we have certifications for our secured platform, SOC 2, ISO 27001, and all those types of things. And as far as stability, we've grown so well on our own, but we've taken on private equity, Aldridge Capital Partners, so we have good, strong financial backing to make sure that you're supported in the best way possible and that we grow and get the things into our services and solutions that you need. We have plenty of customer testimonials of people that have succeeded at this stuff. So if you go to our website, you'll get a copy of these slides. If you go to our website and you can see recorded testimonials and you can see other stories and cases that are out there that basically amplify what I'm telling you here today, that people have actually done this in real life. Now, we're an end-to-end shop. We're just not a software provider. I think one of the things that makes us unique is that we have advisory services that help people devise this, where people want to go, where they're at today, where they desire to be as far as an end state, and build a roadmap on how to get there. We do business strategy workshops and advisory consulting to help people lay out the groundwork. Then we help people implement solutions based upon the criteria that were established up front. And we provide all the education and training, not only on the tool itself, but on the disciplines as well. And then we have ongoing customer success and support to make sure that you're successful and that your adoption goes well. Now, we do webinars like this all the time. So this one today is on the top of the list on these live webinars. And we have Deminars, which is just generic webinars, demos that we do in a webinar format each week. And so we have the next one coming up on the 28th, so more broad-based demonstration potentially. And then we have Tech Tuesdays that basically are more focused on particular functional areas that customers and potential customers can see how things work in detail and basically get some tutorial around that. Now, our next webinar like this one would be next Thursday. We do these on Thursdays, and next week we're doing AI-powered capacity planning in OnePlan, get full resource utilization in tough times. So a little bit of a spin-off on this, but really focused on the resource management aspect of this in more depth. Now, free trials are available to you. We have all different types of templates for you to start with. I'd recommend, if you like what you saw here today, that you use our strategic portfolio management template or our platform template. And just be aware, if you go to oneplan.ai/solutions, that you'll have those up there, or you can go to Microsoft's App Source and they're up there as well. But we would love to provide you complimentary assistance to get the most out of your trial as you can. The idea is we're here to assist you. You don't have to go it alone. And we'd love to engage with you. It's not a bother. We really want to see our customers succeed and get the value out of their trial experience in the time that they invest. So from a next steps perspective, we're happy to do a free business strategy workshop to kind of assess where you're at, where you want to be, and what it would take to get there. You could access a free trial with OnePlan support. And if you're not there yet, you could just ask for a more personalized, detailed demonstration. This was very high level today. One-on-one for your organization based on criteria and requirements that you have. We're happy to set that up for you as well. Or you might just go to our website and research us more. Maybe that's where you're at in your stage of investigation at this point. One way or another, please engage with us. We're here to help. You can reach out to us at contact@oneplan.ai, and we'll make sure you get connected with the right person for the thing that you want to accomplish. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time today, to carving it out of your valuable day. Please reach out. Let us know how we can help. Have a great day.